We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Sunday. We're fortunate to have a guest on the show today, Maddie. And Maddie is a frequent contributor. She's been on the show many times. And, I'd gotten to the point where I wasn't even going to mention this anymore because it's not an issue, it's not a thing. But given what we're going to be talking about up front, I think it's important to mention that Maddie is transgender. And we've talked about that subject many times. If this was just normal political talk, like we'll get to later, I wouldn't even bring it up because it's not important. You are who you are. I am who I am. Who fucking cares? But it's important because you're obviously an advocate and also somebody who's experienced these things. And you had one particular story that you wanted to talk about. And I'll be honest, I haven't talked about it as yet because it's kind of out of my realm in terms of the politics, and I just don't know enough or understand enough about it to speak intelligently. But since you're here, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about in next Benedict and the poor tragedy that happened to this child that should never have happened. This poor child was a student at, I believe it was Owasso School in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
They were transgender, non-binary student. They went into the girls' bathroom because Oklahoma decided to do you have to use the bathroom you were assigned at birth. And so Next was using the girls' bathroom because Next was assigned female at birth. They just were non-binary. And
Next was
I'm sorry?
doing what Next was following the rules, whether
Yep.
he or he liked it or not, because he was trans.
They,
I'm sorry.
they,
They.
they, they, they weren't transitioning to male. They were just non-binary, which means not male or female. They are they.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So theoretically, in the mind of Next, either one would have been reasonable.
Either it it depends on the person. Sometimes it's either is reasonable, sometimes neither is reasonable. It's an individual because sometimes there's gender fluid where they float back and forth. There's gender not conforming. The alphabet mafia has a lot of letters in it,
Um,
and we're gaining more and more.
but Next was following the rules of the state and the
Yep.
school by going into the female bathroom. She was just doing what 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 was expected. Okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
They
Go ahead
went
with the
into
story
the
because
girls' bathroom. They went into the girls' bathroom because, like you said, that was what was expected by the laws of the state. And three older girls jumped her in there. It sounds like um, they went into the bathroom, started picking on them, and Next got upset, which we all
yeah.
get upset if we get picked on. And if you push somebody too far, they're gonna push back a little bit. And the only thing, from what I understand, Next did was splashed water at the girls. And these girls jumped her, beat, or them. Sorry, I struggle a little bit with it
Yeah,
still.
no.
These girls jumped them, beat their head into the ground, bounced their head off the floor multiple times, and from the sounds of it, beat Next for 2 minutes straight
Oh,
before anybody stopped it. And when it was stopped, um, the girls, according to the videos, walked out of the bathroom almost skipping willy-nilly, and Next had to be led down out. They weren't really giving them very much support. From it sounds like from the videos, Next was really leaning pretty heavily, but you get your head
yeah.
cracked a few times, you're gonna be leaning. And went down to see the nurse. The nurse wouldn't call for emergency services. Said that they were fine and was like, just have your parents bring you to the doctors later on. And even though, regardless of that, if somebody gets a head injury, they need to be checked out by professionals, not just
Absolutely.
a nurse in a school. That is very, very dangerous and very risky. And so Nex went to the hospital later that night. I don't know all of what happened at the hospital, but for some reason they were discharged later that night. I don't know if they what tests were performed, what scans were performed to see if Nex's head was okay or anything like that. Plus, after getting bounced off the floor a few times, you're supposed to leave the person there and bring professionals to them, not make them stand up because they could have spinal cord injuries from all
Right.
that
Right.
and severe brain damage from it all. And there was some body cam footage that was released that showed officers trying to pressure Nex into not pressing charges
I did see a short
against these
video.
girls.
I did see a short video um, of her talking to police in the hospital room. What struck me about Nex is I expected kind of a shrinking Violet, and she really, or they really weren't. Um, she was she was a formidable human too. I mean, I'm not saying
Right.
she deserved anything. I'm just saying that she wasn't curled up in a ball weeping. She was speaking openly about what happened. And the police officers came in there kind of jovially like it's no big deal, and clearly that's what they were trying to project here.
Yep. And so they, I mean, eventually they said okay and proceeded. And then Nex was sent home. And the next day, it sounds like they had a seizure
Hmm.
at home because of, I guess, Nex's mother was a nurse, so could relay better information to 911 about the symptoms Nex was showing. And all the symptoms, according to a lot of people, said that it sounds like they had a seizure, brought them to the hospital, and they died.
Oh,
And now there are reports trying to go around saying that Nex didn't die as a result of the trauma
oh,
that
please,
they
motherfucker.
received. Exactly. It's like I, they had no history of seizures, they had no history of anything like that. You don't just have that and die the next day and it not be related to what happened to you.
Well, when I was growing up in the 70s playing football or just goofing out in the yard, if I fell down and hit my head, my mom made sure I stayed awake for an extended period of time because if I went to sleep, something could happen. I've had enough head
Yep.
injuries, nothing major, but head injuries to know it's pretty debilitating and can disorient you. The fact that she, let me ask you this: the fact that she wasn't taken to the hospital, are they trying to blame the parents for that at all? Because as a parent, I would have taken her to a hospital.
They did that night. And that's one of the questions is why were they discharged that night?
That's a
What
good
did the
point.
hospital do or not do at that point? And mind you, this is a school where you have seen the state superintendent on TV calling LGBT people filth,
Right.
calling us disgusting. After Nex's death, these people went on there again and said they were thoughts and prayers and sorry that this happened, but we need this filth out of our schools, referring to Nex, the victim in all this, saying that they're filth and they basically deserved it.
Well, when you talk about filth, you can talk about the judicial system in Oklahoma in generally. Is there any hope that the state of Oklahoma would even do anything about this? Or are these three girls going to get away with it? The doctors, the police, everybody that was complicit in this thing, is any justice going to be served in a state like Oklahoma?
That is a good question. And that's what we're all scared of
Let me
is what they're going to try to do or not do.
let me ask you another question. I assume this could be regarded as a hate crime.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
and if it is, might it be a federal offense?
and that's and from the sounds of it, I don't know if you follow V. They do under the desk news.
Oh yeah.
They said that they actually met with Kamala Harris to discuss this, and apparently Joe and Kamala are very well aware, and it sounds like FBI is getting involved in this and basically forcing the state to do what's right, and they shouldn't have to.
No, they
This
shouldn't
was a
have to.
child. They were 16 years old. They were, from the sounds of it, a straight A student, great academics, looking forward to the doorstep of life. Because I remember 16, I was ready, I was eager to get out there into the world more and
Right.
stretch my legs, and this was all yanked from them.
How are the parents doing now? Have you heard much from the parents since this situation? I mean, this had to be a really tough situation for the parents, not only the death of Nex, but this whole transgender thing for her or they. Um, let me ask you something.
From
Let me ask you something before we go any farther, before I make a fool out of myself. The whole pronoun thing, it confuses me. It's not because I'm being
I
disrespectful, it
know
just confuses me. But it sounds like it even kind of baffles you sometime for you to remember. So, I mean, we shouldn't feel bad.
it's
As long as we're not being disrespectful, we shouldn't be bad for making that mistake.
it's it's about making the effort
Right,
for the change, and using they them has always been used in singular. It's just it's newer in our vernacular to use it instead of he she.
right,
It's a newer thing that it's just taking some time to weed its way through our vernacular, and hopefully it'll change. I mean, how long ago was it before transgender was even a word?
right, right, exactly. And you have to understand people like me, 63 years old, it's always been he or she. And even in
Right,
even in the case with me talking to you, you're transgender and I refer to you as she.
right.
And that's
And that's how
accurate.
I identify.
And
Yes,
that's
that is
accurate.
accurate with me.
So when you throw
And
another one in there, it seems confusing to me. But like I always tell people, whatever I'm doing, all you have to do is give me a little time to acclimate to it. As long as I know what I need to do, it takes me a minute or two to I used to when I used to do traffic reports, they wanted to change the intro to the traffic report. And I say, you're gonna have to give me a few days. I mean, I'm going to try to do it every time, but I'm going to fall back into what I'm used to. And then over time you go, okay, now I got it. And then that becomes the norm. So it takes me a little while to
yeah,
adapt, but I do adapt eventually. Um, but
and
what could be
next apparently
what could be worse than being LGBTQ or transgender in a fucking shithole like Oklahoma? It's got to be absolute fucking torture.
it's got to be, because like I said, from the top down, everybody was complicit. The school knew that Next was being bullied the entire year. These people were constantly picking on them, constantly creating problems, and I don't know if assault was ever done before this time, but I mean, I've been bullied in school. I wouldn't be surprised if some
Yeah.
forms of physical altercations have taken place. But it sounds like was Nex's mother and grandmother were both very supportive of them. Um, they did say Nex's headstone will bear their name. Their will say Nex. It won't say their birth name, which it's honoring the memory. And as a parent, I can't imagine what they're going through. The whole
Yeah.
idea of it just scares the hell out of me, because my daughter is LGBT as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
That's
thankfully, we live in a state where people seem to care. But the school didn't care. Everybody failed. Everybody at that school and around it failed this child.
But for people in that community, the LGBTQ community, as much as you might find yourself lucky that you don't live in Oklahoma, this whole anti transgender, anti LGBTQ thing is kind of spreading through a number of states. And when you see something
And
like that, you have to wonder, is this something that's going to catch hold and we're going to go back 50 years and then all of a sudden be nothing but pariah? I mean, when I was a young boy in the 60s, maybe even the 70s to an extent, the whole idea of a homosexual relationship was fucking illegal. I mean, you go to
hmm
jail for it. If you were dancing with a guy in a bar and you were a guy, they'd take you to fucking jail. It's just crazy. And I don't know if people realize just how short a time ago it wasn't accepted by anybody in this country.
and it was the late 90s when the young man, I believe his last name was Shepherd,
Right.
was tied to a fence and beaten to death.
Oh,
And
and towed by a truck. He was tied to the back of a
yeah,
truck and dragged.
yeah, these people find it fun to torture and kill us. And we're just trying to exist. We're not trying to create problems. Next had their own friends.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to get involved with these people or start a scuffle, but they just couldn't leave them alone. And that comes from the parents and it comes from the school allowing it. It sounds like other Oklahoma schools have had teachers uh, degrade LGBT students, degrade other teachers who
Wow.
are LGBT friendly. And I'm at a loss for words. It's getting so scary out there to be LGBT.
Well, it's getting scary to be different in any way. If we're looking at MAGA and we're looking at Republicans right now, they seem to have a fear of everybody, whether you're LGBTQ or transgender or brown or Jewish or Muslim. Doesn't matter. As long as you're not an old white guy like me, you have a problem with them. And that's one of the essences of one of the problems I have with a lot of religions. If you're not me, you're going to hell. If you're not me, you're not worth anything. And that's the real problem. They they don't value anybody but those people that are like them. And you wonder who raised these motherfuckers. I mean, were they raised by wolves for Christ's sake?
I don't know. And it's so strange because like I'm going through it in my personal life. My mom, I'm cutting my parents off again out of my life. I cut them off for a year because my mom was going down the right wing rabbit hole and she's gotten a lot worse. So I don't want that
Worse.
around my children. I'm cutting them up worse.
Wow.
She is posting multiple things a day in support of Trump, in support of people in Trump MAGA world, anti-immigration. She isn't posting anti-LGBT, but she's skirting really, really close to it.
Right, right.
Like she'll post things by creators on other topics while they're wearing shirts bashing against the LGBT community.
Well, let's be honest, Maddie. If
And but
you
she doesn't.
if you don't if you don't say anything against any topic, whether it be people of color, transgender people, whatever, if you don't say anything but you support people that do, you're just as guilty. You're just as complicit. I don't care. That's why when we talk about the Republicans and they say, well, we're not MAGA. Yeah, you are, motherfucker, because you're going along with what they're
Yep.
doing. You support them, so you're just as bad. I'm sorry if you don't like that, but the facts are the facts. And I will tell you this, my experience, we talked about my dad, and if my dad were alive, he would have been a Trumplafuck. There's no question about it. That was just his mentality. But I've had other people in my family that are Trump fans, and it seems extreme, but the only thing you can do is cut them out, because they're basically like a virus. If you can avoid bringing a virus to your family, you're going to do it. You're going to do everything you can to do it. And it's sad. Maybe you cut off family members. Maybe you cut off a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister, but you're not doing it to be mean to them. You're doing it to save the people around you. And that's your job, to protect your family. So, as harsh as it may seem, it's necessary because that will bleed over uh, into your family, and you just can't allow that.
Yeah, in fact, I had to keep my 13-year-old daughter from messaging my mom and just railing into her and calling her a bunch of names.
Well,
But that's who my daughter is.
well, and she's 16, so she's a kid, and that would be the natural
13.
response. 13? Okay. And so
Yes.
my experience in dealing with Trumplefucks, I've had a few on the show, and I've talked to some off the show and stuff, and there is nothing to be gained by arguing with them because you can't get them to see the light. You can't get them to change their mind. And I think what you're seeing now in your mom right now with her ramping it up, I think this is something we have to be ready for. The Trumplafucks are going to be ramping up real hard between now and November because Donald Trump is under the gun. He's literally done financially, legally. He's got no way out. It may not be happening as fast as people want, but it's over. I don't care what anybody says. And when they get to that point, they refuse to acknowledge that they're wrong. So what they then do is start ramping it up, getting more loud about it. And this is what I've always said about Donald Trump, but of course the Trumplafucks too. As it gets worse and worse for them, they're going to get louder and louder because that's all they know how to do. So we better prepare for some pretty wild shit and either ignore it, block it, or deal with it. But I don't know how you deal with it because I've never been able to get through to any of them, no matter how long I talk.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's violence, more violence towards people in the near future over the summer as all these cases start kicking off and everything because like you said, the hammer's coming down. There is
Yeah.
no escaping it. There is no pushing it out. This is happening. The trial in New York City where he got hit with $450 million
Yeah.
and gaining at 80%, $87,000 a day interest.
I think it's
There
closer to
he
111 now, but yeah, it was a lot of money. $1 million a week.
he and he can't he has 30 days from yesterday or Friday to appeal, and if he can't appeal in that 30 days, no matter what, he needs to come up with the money. And no, and from the sounds of it, he's going around everywhere and nobody's loaning him
Well, who would? I mean,
because
he's going to lose the appeal. They're going to take the money, and then they have to count on Donald Trump paying him back, but he's going to be broke. So there's really, and they really don't, the buildings that they could use for collateral, he doesn't own them outright. They're very heavily leveraged. So they'd have to have like 10 buildings to even cover what it is. And then they got to deal with trying to sell 10 buildings. And then you got to deal with somebody who just happens to have 450 million sitting around and willing to put it up and take a chance against Donald Trump. It just doesn't make any sense. They're not going to do that. He's going to end up getting his shit
no,
liquidated. That's what's going to happen. And I think that's when people are going to start screaming. When the money finally gets taken from him and he starts squawking about it. And then in March and on the 25th, when that criminal case starts, and if that ends in a month or two and he actually gets convicted, it's going to be a shit show at first, and then Donald Trump will fade off into the sunset and he will go under his rock if he can, but he won't be able to long. He'll be placed elsewhere ultimately.
I'm actually interested to see the trial coming up in March because his 30 days runs up just before that trial.
Yeah.
And there's a question of how's he going to pay for all these attorneys once they start liquidating everything he has? Where's he going to go when Letitia James starts saying, okay, we're starting with 40 Wall Street, we're starting with Bedminster, we're starting with the Trump, with Mar-a-Lago, and we're starting with the plane. where's he going to go once they take those four things away from him?
Right, right. Well, he's got golf clubs and stuff like that, but it's a lot of stuff he has is just where he licensed his name. He didn't really own the building. Like for example, he owns Trump Tower. It's worth $160 million, but he's got 100 million mortgaged. So
Yep.
he's got 60 million in equity there. That doesn't even cover fucking E. Jean Carroll. And
Nope.
the interesting thing is that he went to the judge. Now remember, this is the judge he's been pounding on for 6 months, talking badly about him. He says, hey, could I get a little extra time on this 355, now 455? And the judge said, you've shown me no reason to do it. No, we're not doing that. And then the funny part of it, his lawyers, and this had to be something that Donald Trump pushed them to do because it's absolutely ridiculous, not a thing. But then the lawyers said, well, you got to give us time to at least give a counter verdict. A counter verdict? There ain't no such thing
There's
as a
no
counter
such
verdict.
thing.
There's no such thing as a counter verdict. You got a verdict of X, and that's what you're going to fucking pay. There's no counter to this. The only way you could counter it is if you uh, went to the person suing you and said, "Look, I can't pay that, but I can pay this. Do you want to work that deal out?" But I guarantee you, Letitia ain't that girl. She's not doing it. No way.
No, she will not go down that road. And I'm happy that all this is happening. I can't wait for this entire alternate weird fucking timeline we're in to finally blow up.
Yeah,
It
absolutely. Well,
and
the thing is as much as he's trying to delay this $450 million one, it was kind of a secondary story, but he also applied to the judge in the E. Jean Carroll case to give him extra time in the 83 million. Because remember, he's only got about a week and a half, 2 weeks before he's got to put up 83 million. Now, prior to that, he lost 5 million. He did look for a bond to put up the 5 million, couldn't find it for 5 million. So he took the
yep.
money out of his pocket. So that tells me the 83 million is going to have to come out of his pocket. And then a short time after that, he's got to start trying to break the $455 million nut. He's just going to be buried financially. The only option is to liquidate his shit.
And it sounds like Tish James is all ready to do that. She's lined up and to start seizing his assets. And there's already the oversight in the Trump org and everything. So it's not like they can just start doing something on their own, but because the judge and that's overseeing everything has to sign off now on things.
Right, right.
And so they can't start liquidating on their own and selling it to, say, the Crown Prince or something, because for them to be able to buy Trump.
Well, theoretically, people always say, well, he'll get the money from Russia or Saudi Arabia. If they gave him any money in the past, and I'm sure they did, they didn't give it to him because they're BFFs and they have pajama parties. They gave him to him because there was something to be gained. He had power, he had position, he had whatever. He doesn't have any of that anymore. He's not president.
He ain't
He's
got
going. He's going to
he
be a
ain't got
broke ass bitch.
shit anymore.
He's like a lame animal. There is nothing to be gained for Saudi Arabia or Russia to give him the money, and there is absolutely no hope that they'll ever get it in return. So why would they do that? The only possible way is if they thought they could influence the election because they have something to gain if he became president. But even they have to be smart enough that the odds of him becoming president and winning this election are so small that it's not worth the gamble for them. They should just be happy with what they got because they got a lot and start a new plan because Donald Trump isn't going to be an issue after November, if not before.
Absolutely. I'm hoping, and from the way things are rumbling around the country, especially after what happened down in Alabama when they're saying IVF frozen embryos are children and need to be protected, but they won't
Yeah.
protect necks, a child breathing. But
Right.
I think they are starting to finally realize that they done fucked up and stepped in it.
They did. Yeah. I
And
mean,
we all have on the left have been we've been warning them for years. This is where this is going, and this is what's going to happen. And they're like, nope. And then I hear that some of those IVF patients down there in Alabama, obviously, if you're doing IVF, you got money
yeah.
because IVF is $25,000 a shot.
Right.
And so they were like, well, we'll just move our embryo or our frozen children into another place outside of the state. And the companies that moved those said, nope, we're not moving them.
Wow.
Under your law, those are protected. We're not touching them.
Yeah.
So all
Well,
those potential patients are fucked.
well, and I think that the whole point of them doing it wasn't so much to control the embryos. I think it was to make it difficult enough where nobody did it anymore, that they just ended the whole practice of IVF. But then Donald Trump comes out and speaks against them. So what do you do there? You got Alabama, who's directly behind Donald Trump, kissing his ass, and then Donald Trump says, "No, you're wrong." You know, it's funny. You would think these people would check into some things before they make these rash decisions, but they're so confident in their own prejudice and their own fucking um, twisted minds. They just do whatever and think they're going to get away with it. Alabama's not going to get away with it. Something's going to have to change here, and the legislature is going to have to go back and change the law and tuck their tail between their legs. Otherwise, they'll be destroyed, including the
Right.
Supreme Court.
And right now, how they're all back talking and saying that that's not right. We should protect IVF and everything. I think that's lip service.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think they mean it.
No, I don't think they mean it
I
either.
I think that that this is exactly what they wanted because the next step is because of this, and they could say that an embryo or a clump of cells that because these embryos that they implant aren't even they're nothing. It's like a clump of like a couple hundred cells at that
Right.
point.
Right. Well, you know,
And but they can use that to ban birth control,
mhm.
day after pills. They can ban everything with that one ruling.
Well, and Republicans as a whole will say and do anything, whether it's right or wrong or crazy, if they think it's going to benefit them in fundraising or benefit them in uh, in votes. So now they're really caught up. I mean, Donald Trump is speaking against it because he thinks it'll benefit him to be for IVF. But what Donald Trump has to understand is he's the one that claims the responsibility for overturning Roe v. Wade, and he's realizing that's not working for him. But he can't walk out of that because there's so many videotapes of him saying, "Yeah, that's all me." But what Donald Trump doesn't understand is what's happening with this IVF is a direct result of overturning Roe v. Wade. So you may or may not like it, but you're fucking responsible for it.
Yep. This is this is what happens when you bring religion into the courtroom and you bring religion into the legislature of a state or a country. It all starts falling apart. You can't We not only need to remind everybody that there is a separation of church and state, I think we need to make that wall stronger.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need to start passing constitutional amendments, not only reaffirming that, but drawing hard line rules that you cannot bring your religion in any form or fashion into these halls.
And unfortunately, that's not going to happen until after the 2024 election and assuming Democrats take the House and the Senate. That's the only way it's going to happen. I hate to tell folks that. So it's not on the politicians, it's on you. And you got to do what you got to do if you feel worried about this situation. All right, Maddie, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We'll talk about the South Carolina primary and some of the other shit that's going on there because it's a big win for Donnie, but not really. There's some issues for Donnie in this one. All right, we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Maddie is with us today, listener Maddie. And let's talk about the South Carolina primary. That happened last night. And it kind of went like we expected. Donald Trump was expected to beat Nikki Haley in her home state by 20, maybe even 30 points. He did win by double digits, but it ends up being more like 15 points. Now, Donald Trump, of course, is coming out claiming victory. Well, it's all over now. She might as well just quit, and she's not going to quit. She's waiting for Donald Trump to keel over. She's looking to make a name for herself, either for this year when he bows out or for 2028. She can say she did all this and people know her. She's setting up her future, is what she's doing. She has no hopes of being the nominee if Donald Trump is still in the race come the time they decide that. Um, but you're not a. I think you and I agree on the fact that you and I aren't Nikki Haley fans. She's not the shining light in this primary. If you don't like Donald Trump, well, Nikki Haley will save us. No, she won't.
No, Nikki Haley is just as bad as Donald Trump because after the ruling came down in Alabama, she was like, I believe that an embryo is a child too and deserves all the rights. But she was like, but I had my kid through IVF. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you hypocrite. They're ladder pullers. They use the system and then pull the ladder up behind them because they don't want anybody else to use it.
right. And that's the whole thing about the Republican Party. They act as if they're elite. They're talking down to the constituents. We know what's best. Yeah, 70% of you believe in Roe v. Wade, but we're voting against it because we know better for you. And you would think the Republicans would notice that and get tired of it. I mean, I think we'll see the result of it in the 2024 November election. They keep wrapping their arms around Roe v. Wade and the overturning of Roe v. Wade. They got beat up in the 2022 election, but somehow they still haven't learned a lesson. I think they're finally going to understand after the November election because it's going to devastate them. I think it's the biggest issue that they have to worry about.
Exactly. And what's funny is have they dealt with this stuff back in 2015, 2014 after Barack Obama won again?
Yeah.
From the sounds of it, they were actually starting to progress into that direction of stopping the anti-abortion stuff, stopping all the other stuff, and start becoming fiscally conservatives again, the way they were originally supposed to be. And Donald Trump came in and riled up all the toothless jackals out there, and they all jumped on board. And then they were like, oh, we got a whole new crop of voters. And it's like, no, you didn't, because a lot of these people are criminals and can't vote anyways.
Right. Well, the funny thing is, my wife and I babysat our granddaughter yesterday. Fucking tiring, man. Uh, I said, honey, you know what you are? She goes, what? I go, you're a lot. And she says, what's that mean? I go, it's good. It's good. She is a lot and she
Yep.
is tiring. But it's funny when you have a 3-year-old running around here and she loves popsicles and she'll eat as many popsicles as you put in front of her. At some point, you just don't even mention the word popsicle because as soon as it pops in her mind, I want a popsicle. And that's the way it is with Republicans. Um, they had been pretty beat down with common sense and logic from the Democrats and by society as a whole. But the moment Donald Trump started spewing the absolute bullshit he did, it was like saying, I'll have a fucking popsicle. That sounds great. I'm going to jump on that train. He opened the door for all of this and made it okay to talk about, because if anybody questioned him, they said, well, the president said it, and that makes it okay. And that's what it is. He basically inflamed a boil that had been there for decades, and it was kind of dormant up until this uh, crazy motherfucker starts saying, "Oh, okay, we can come up, we can breathe the air, and we can say whatever we want," and it's absolutely ridiculous what they're willing to say and expect.
Exactly. I mean, and and it leads to what happened to Next in Oklahoma
Right.
when the higher ups are spewing hate and spewing rhetoric and saying and giving carte blanche to people who are the dregs of society that they, they couldn't rub two. They have two brain cells fighting for third place.
Right. Right. Exactly. For a long time I've said that
And
Donald Trump is racist. And people will always say to me, Republicans will say, he's not racist. That's just the way he talks. And he said something this weekend. First, there was a moderator that came on Fox or Orion or something like this. And he came on and he was just giddy. He looked at the host and he says, my God, Donald Trump is an absolute marketing genius. And the guy said, go on. He said, he came out with these tennis shoes. Now, every black person is going to vote for him because we know black people love tennis shoes. How do, how do you not even know that that is the most racist fucking thing you could possibly say on a nationally televised show? It's fucking crazy.
it absolutely is. I know the clip you're talking about. I heard somebody call that guy that was saying that Pee Wee Goebbels
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about
because he
right.
looks like cross between Pee Wee Herman and Joseph Goebbels.
Well,
And
Donald Trump
and
Donald Trump got in there
I
too.
was just I was just gonna say though, what where is the caucasity of a white person telling black people what they do and do not like? It's like, come on. Not
Especially,
only is the community not a monolith, but you know nothing about it.
yeah, this guy looked like the epitome of a terminally white douchebag. That's what he fucking was, and he's a loser. And but Donald Trump gets up in his little rallies, and he says, "Wow, man, the lights in here are really, really bright. I can't see everybody." He says, "I can see the black people though." And then he looks at me and goes, I can see the black people. I've come a long, long way, suggesting that at one time he was really racist. And now by saying what he is, he's not quite as racist because he acknowledged black people. How do people like that not hear that and go, wait a fucking minute? I mean, even if you're a Trump follower and you happen to be black, how does that not put you off?
I don't know. I personally don't like being talked down to. I don't like being lied to by people. And that it's that's why it's a fucking joke. It's these people are parodies onto themselves and know nothing of what they're talking about. And they're they're saying this not to say that they're not talking to black people when they say that. They're talking to white people when they
Right.
say that, trying to bolster, hey, he's got the black vote now because he has a criminal record. It's like, way to tell all black people they're criminals. What the hell's wrong with you?
Well, that was the next thing that he said
And
was that it wasn't just a slip or a mistake when he said that thing about the lights. He also said, "Yeah, the black people really like those T-shirts with my mugshot on it. They're selling them for like $20 a piece." And he's acting as if because he has a criminal record now, or that he's been indicted, that He's now got street cred with black people. That's just fucking stupid. That's It
If
amazes
he thinks
me.
he has street, if he thinks he has this cred, I'd like to see him walk downtown in some of the in some of these inner cities and see how much cred he really has when he gets his ass beat.
Hell, even in his own hometown of New York. Pick out the
Right.
bad side of New York and walk down there, Donnie. See what the fuck happens. It's it's truly, and they've been asking people their response to that, and it really goes back to the whole situation where he did that. There was that video of him saying that he grabbed women's private parts. Um, they're basically, when that back then they said, "Oh, that's just locker room talk." Oh, really? Because I've been in some locker rooms and I don't hear too many people talk like that. Not above 18. Maybe a 14-year-old kid might talk some shit, but not an adult. But that's the same thing they're doing about these racist comments. Oh, that's just how he talks. That's Donnie being Donnie. And I'm afraid that's not an excuse. If I were to do it or you were to do it, we would be canceled immediately and justifiably so.
And they're like, he's not racist. That's just how he talks. It's like he talks that way because he's racist. This isn't a hard equation. This isn't calculus we're trying to work with. This is 1 + 1 = 2. Racist
Yeah.
people say racist things and do racist things.
And racist
And
people, one way you know somebody's a racist when they tell you, I'm the least racist person you've ever met. That's when you know they're doing. I mean, Donald Trump's been saying and doing things that are racist since the early 70s. So it's not like this is a new revelation to people. It's not like there isn't a track record or a history that you can refer to. It's all fucking there. It's just that people refuse to look at
exactly. And I remember growing up hearing my parents say, I'm not racist. I have a black friend.
it.
It's like, do you? Or do you have somebody in your that you work with or is near you that's black? Do you go to their parties? Do you hang out with them and all their family? Are you part of their community in any way, shape, or form? No? Then sit your white ass down.
You know what white people do? Um, I know somebody, I won't name them obviously, but they once told me, yeah, I work with a gay woman. Okay. And the next phrase tells you where the prejudice is. He goes, yeah, she's pretty nice, as if she wouldn't be because she's gay. And once they feel like some kind of connection or relationship, then they like to push it. They like to say shit that may be on the line because they want to see this person laugh or accept it so they can feel better about their bias. But they do it every time. Oh, yeah, she's all right for a gay woman. And then funny, I just said this to her and she joked back and I joked back and they were relishing in the fact that they were able to make racist or prejudiced statements against this woman, and she accepted it. Well, what the fuck else is she supposed to do when you're working in an industry that's mostly men? She's trying to survive, for God's sake. But this is what they do. They not only are racist or prejudiced, but they try to prove that it's okay by how they interact with people that they actually like in spite of themselves. It's an insidious fucking thing, and it amazes me that how much that happens.
Exactly. I've seen many a white people who have friends who have quote unquote friends, people in their orbit that are black, and they always like to try to push it, and they just want to drop the N word.
Oh yeah,
They want to drop that word so bad. They just want permission just to say it once. And it's
it,
like, and
and
I'm
it's
like, if you're around all these people, do it.
yeah.
See how many teeth you pick up off the floor afterwards.
Well, and the thing about it is they only want to do it to show they can.
Yep.
there's no need to say it. I mean, there's no way in the world I would say it. And it's not for any other reason than people of color, black people, find it offensive and it would be disrespectful. Why would I want to be offensive or disrespectful to somebody that is a friend or an associate? That's the thing. But it's in them. It's kind of like the Trumplafucks that come up to me and talk to me about Trump. They know how I feel, they know what I say. And I'm not venturing off into any political conversations, but they feel compelled to come up to me to somehow um, inf- force on me their beliefs so they can prove not to me, but to themselves that they're right. Now, when they do that, I don't talk about politics outside of this unless somebody pushes me in the issue. But once you push me there, all bets are fucking off. And I'm not stopping until you walk away crying. That's the only way it's going to fucking stop. But these people feel compelled to push their morals or their thought process on you, and they don't stop until you agree with them. And I mean, I get this too. I've got this emailer I'm going to read. Boris, good guy, smart guy, but I've got people trying to tell me what I should deal with that is important on the show. And I always kiddingly say it's my show. I'm going to do what the fuck I want. And that's partly joking, but partly true because I'm finally in a position where I don't have somebody in a suit or something behind me telling me what I can and can't say. I'm doing what I'm doing. You can like it, you can not like it, you can listen, you can not listen. I don't fucking care at this point. I've already accomplished more than I ever thought I would with followers and viewers and stuff like that. So I'm cool. But when you tell them no or you can't do that, they don't just accept that. You're not going to change my mind. I understand your point. We disagree, so let it go. But people don't want to do that. They want to keep pushing until you say, okay, I give in. And these are people that have spent their lives doing that to other people and getting them to give in. Unfortunately, my family will tell you I'm the wrong motherfucker to do that to because I don't give in. I will not give in. In fact, if you push me, I will push back harder. But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to indoctrinate everybody, including the people that they're prejudice of, to accepting what they believe. And that's the insidious part of this shit.
And they try to wrap it up in a nice, neat little package and say, it's just my opinion. It's like, well, your opinion is wrong.
Yeah,
And they're like, well, it's my opinion. It's not right or wrong. It's no, it's wrong,
it's
period.
absolutely, well, that's the other thing people will say to me um, when we're talking about something like this with Trumplafucks or racist or anti-Semites or Messiah, whatever it is, um, they'll say whatever they say, and I'll say that's absolutely not true, and here's why. And they'll say, I don't know why you can't see my side of the story. Why can't we compromise on this? Because you're fucking wrong. I'm not going to compromise with a lie, with bullshit, with some kind of racist comment. You are absolutely wrong. And if you think I'm not a decent person because I won't compromise with you, so be it. But I'm not going to give an inch when what you're saying is harmful to other people or fucking wrong. And they don't grasp that. They think there's some play there where I got to give in to them. I have to give in to them. I don't. Neither do you. Neither does anybody.
And that is what's led us to this point is too many people have given in over the years. And this didn't just happen overnight. This has
No,
taken decades to build, and they've been, well, can't we compromise? Can't we compromise? And that was the only thing that they were trying to do was move closer and closer to their goal. And so it's like, no, we can't compromise with people who think it's okay to harm people, think it's okay to judge people, think it's okay to tell people they are not allowed to live their lives or love who they love or enjoy existence. And no, this isn't a question of should we give Ukraine $80 billion or should we give them $60 billion for
Right.
military aid support? That's
Right.
something we can talk about. That's something that can be debated. These are fundamental rights
Yeah.
that everybody should have,
Yeah.
but
And
they think their rights are the only ones that matter.
absolutely. The law should apply to you, but not to us. That's typically what it is. But people have to understand, when I say the things I do, people say, well, you're being pretty strong about this. You have to understand with decades of apathy and willing to compromise with bad people is put us in this position now. They slowly ate away and they've gotten to the point where they have some power and they're making disturbing fucking decisions. Decisions that are not only affecting this country, but affecting the very lives of human beings in this country, which is exactly the opposite of what our government should be doing.
Exactly. I mean, we saw it on full display multiple times, like when we were discussing the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
We had the votes that we could have knocked that through without question, but they kept giving in to try to win over the Republicans' votes. And then at the end of the day, when they gave them everything they wanted, they still said, fuck you. We saw it with the border deal just a couple weeks ago.
Well, yeah, that's exactly
You
it.
give them,
You negotiate with them. You want to pass something, and they say no, and you negotiate some things out of it, and then they still don't vote for it. Then what's the point of negotiating with these fucks? The problem is we've got people on one side and people on the other side, and never the twain shall meet. There is no compromise because neither side will compromise. And I understand why the Democrats don't want to compromise, because what the Republicans want is so fucking draconian and so bad for our country. Why would they want to give in? It's like what I was saying before. We can't compromise on something between right and wrong. There is no middle ground there. It's either right or it's wrong. And if you're on the side of wrong, sorry, I'm not with you.
yep, you're, and all these people that are making their opinions, they're making it on their alternate facts,
Right.
as Kellyanne Conway put it years ago. And it's like, you're not entitled to your own facts. Facts are facts. And how often were they screaming, facts don't care about your feelings? Yet they're the ones that seem pretty far up in their fields.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how emotional the Republicans are and how much more emotional they're getting as they lose continually over and over again. I thought it was funny after the judge signed this lawsuit for $455 million to Donald Trump. Alina Baba Haba, who is his lawyer, comes out and is still acting like there's some hope for him. We're not, this isn't going to stand. What are you going to do? You want to appeal? Great. Give us a $500 million and you'll be able to appeal. But if you can't, then something else is going to be done. It's like they keep doubling down and tripling down and they keep losing. I mean, at what point do they say to themselves, well, this is fucking dumb. I keep looking stupid. I keep being wrong, but they keep doing it. The only way I can explain it is what I said before. They know they're losing and they're fighting for their life, and they will do and say anything, regardless of how silly it is, in hopes that something sticks.
They're addicted to it. They're
Uh,
addicted to everything. It's what I said with Mike Lindell. The reason why he went so crazy for Christian and so crazy for Trump is because he never figured out why he was addicted to crack in the first place. So he just replaced one addiction with another.
yeah, and you know what? The
And
result is the same. He's broke. He said he's down to $10,000. He could end up going to jail uh, for this insurrection thing or whatever fraud he may have committed. He's not indicted in that sense yet, but there's still more coming, and he certainly could be in line for that stuff. But here's a guy had a company that had a going concern, making a lot of money. He was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and now he's got $10,000. If that isn't the essence of what would happen to a crackhead, maybe not to that level, but lose everything and then wonder what the fuck happened. It's truly amazing that somebody his family didn't say, stop, fucking stop before you lose it all. And now
And
he's
so,
surprised he lost it all.
and I don't know if anybody close to him has been saying it, but I know us on the left have been screaming it from the rooftops since 2016 when he got it, when Trump first got into office. We knew what was going to happen and we were warning them, and everybody was like, no, 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 just give him a chance, give him a chance. And it's like, no, he should never have gotten the chance in the first place.
No. And the thing about it is, as far as Mike Lindell or any of these other fucks believing us, you have to understand we are this legion of liars and a cabal of pedophiles. So of course they would shun us. You know, we are anti God and these horrible people. But again, it's all just made up. I mean, we're seeing this now with this whole impeachment of Joe Biden. They have no evidence. Then they bring in a guy who's clearly a liar. He's being indicted for such. Now we know that he's getting information uh, from the Russian intelligence, and everybody's trying to act like, oh, same thing. Joe Biden's still in trouble. We're still going after him, which is absolutely ridiculous. When up until yesterday, I think the whole big story had been buried. And the big story is that somehow Russian intelligence has infiltrated our FBI because they've been working with this guy for 10 years and then infiltrates our Congress. Now, that sounds bad enough. But then we find out that Congress maybe knew about that ahead of time and still used it. The big story here is, why is Russian intelligence being accepted by members of Congress when they were told not to, just to get Joe Biden? That is problematic not only for the Republican Party, but for our government system as a whole.
And my question after that is, what the fuck is Merrick Garland doing about it?
That's a good point.
Because if they're peddling Russian disinformation, they're acting as foreign agents. And I don't think speech and debate clause covers when you act as a foreign agent.
No, no, it doesn't. And Jerry Nadler is asking the DOJ, Representative Nadler is asking the DOJ for an investigation, I think, to the judge or district attorney that started this, a guy by the name of Brady. They want him to look into the fact that Brady probably knew this was the case and just passed it on down the line. These people want so badly for Donald Trump to win and the Democrats to lose that they will not only cheat, they will commit treason if that's what it takes. And most of these fucks will say, I'm fine with it.
And everybody always asked why Trump wasn't charged with treason. And because the Constitution lays out exactly what treason is, and it's aiding a foreign government
Right.
against our government, whereas Trump didn't aid a foreign government directly. If these people are spreading Russian disinformation, aiding a foreign government, that would fall under the treason category.
Absolutely.
And that's a long haul in prison or potentially a bullet through the head.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is, we've got sitting members of Congress that are sweating out the insurrection possible indictments that are coming, and they're coming. There's no question about that. But you throw this into the mix, you've got James Comer and Jim Jordan, people who maybe have been aware of this stuff. I don't know about the other reps, but certainly they knew something. And if they knew something, like you say, that would fit perfectly within treason and would have to be investigated. Now, Merrick Garland,
Yeah.
whether he'll go to that extent, I've said before, I think Merrick Garland was a good choice when he came in, but I think he's proved to be kind of a puss. He's afraid of public opinion. He's afraid of making waves, and that's just not who we need as a fucking attorney general.
No, he definitely needs to find his spine a little bit more in this and stop. I mean, Jack Smith is amazing. He's doing an amazing job and everything, but Merrick Garland could have done all this before. He didn't need a Jack Smith to do it. He could have started this.
Or at the very least, he could have not waited 2 years to get Jack Smith on the job. He could have hired Jack Smith 2 days after he took his job and get this fucking thing going. And guess what? All this would be over with. All these problems that Merrick Garland wanted to avoid would not exist now if he just acted properly.
The only, I guess, grace I give him was a person I follow. The way he explained it made sense. The one thing about Merrick Garland not starting the investigation right away because Congress was taking it over and starting it
Yeah.
was because there was no federal investigation going. Congress had more leeway to get information from these people because they couldn't claim the fifth because I'm worried about a penny of the federal investigation into this. I mean, but it's like you could have still been doing a little bit of stuff. You didn't have to sit there and wait for Congress to hand you the whole package.
Well,
You could have started looking.
to be perfectly honest with you, the idea of Congress coming up with evidence and turning it over to the DOJ is exactly opposite of what it normally happens. It's the DOJ turns things over to
Mm-hmm.
Congress. And again, that can only be attributed to somebody shuffling their feet. And that somebody could only be Merrick Garland at this point.
Yeah, the Democrats got to stop worrying about the optics of pushing hard against these fascist people that are trying to take over our country. They got to
Absolutely.
stop worrying about how how is it going to look like the person he appointed to look into Joe Biden was the wrong person to ever have done that. That was the stupidest thing he could have ever done. I get why he didn't have anything changed because that would require going in front of Congress. He would start looking like Bill Barr, changing the reports, but you didn't have to put that one dumbass in the investigation. There was plenty of other Republican investigators you could have put there.
Yeah. There's something weird about that whole situation. I mean, everything he said in that report came out at the right time, almost verbatim of Republican narrative. I mean, it was as if Jim
Yep.
Jordan wrote that motherfucking report. And that's what troubled me. It came out
And
at
that
just the right time for them, and it said all the things that dumb fucks say.
I'd be actually interested in who was that fucker talking to when he was
Yeah,
writing that report?
yeah.
Who
I'll
was
be
proofreading his report?
yeah. I'll be honest with you. I think somebody should investigate the investigator because that kind of thing should not
Yep.
happen. That kind of, you know, somebody somebody was talking about, everybody says Joe Biden's old. Um, and then we hear about Donald Trump slurring words and not finishing sentences and going off on tangents. One psychologist or I don't know what it was, psychologist or some mental doctor was watching, and of course you can't really um, decide what anybody's really got, but based on what he saw the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump as such. Joe Biden mind is aging because he's getting older. Donald Trump's mind is demented. It's showing dementia. It's showing pure and clear signs of dementia. That's a big difference. Now, granted, I'd rather have a 45-year-old sharp minded guy or gal doing this, but that's not the lot we were handed. We were handed what we were handed, at least for the next um, 2 to 4 years, and you got to pick the best choice. It's not a hard choice if you have above average intelligence. And if you're saying that Donald Trump is better mentally than Joe Biden, you're just not fucking watching.
The only people saying that are the same people that say he talks like us. Yeah, he talks like a fucking idiot
Yeah, exactly.
who doesn't know what they're talking about. He's a hype man. He's just up there spewing shit.
And he's
And
not
I
even good
actually
at it.
came up with I had a thought and I talked to my wife about this. Um, Everybody's always wondered why he moves his hands all the time when he talks, how he's doing that. I wonder whether or not he knows it. That is actually a form of hypnosis.
Really?
That is Adolf Hitler did it, and they use it in psychology called in a treatment called EMDR, where it's recalling memories and trying to change them, and it's a semi-hypnotic state.
Wow.
And while they're doing it, the therapist is constantly going like this, and you have to watch the finger because it engages both sides of the brain, which if the counselor is talking, it makes the brain very, very susceptible to input.
Wow. Well, I'd
And
hate to suggest that
if
Donald
he's
Trump is
doing that,
smart.
whether or not he's knowing,
To think that Donald Trump is smart enough to do that, I find that hard to believe. But it's maybe something he learned when he was younger, when he was reading the Hitler books or something. There's something hypnotic
because
about
Hitler
him for
did do
some
that
people.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's something hypnotic about Donald Trump or charismatic about Donald Trump with a faction of people. I mean, I just get disgusted when I watch him, but there are a certain group of people that are just dumb fucks that are taken in by all the ridiculousness that he throws out there. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
And not everybody is susceptible to it.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I think this coming week is going to be interesting. There'll be a lot more things coming. I would presume, I keep saying this, but I would presume we'd hear something from the Supreme Court. Hopefully they won't stay his immunity thing because that'll put him into a tailspin. He'll get that much closer to owing money, whether it be the 83 million or the 455 million. I think either one is going to fucking break him. So that will be interesting. Um, Maddie, I appreciate you coming on the show, especially talking about.
I know it is.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you said the Supreme Court. I would, I hope that they don't give him a stay or take it up, because it does seem like the Supreme Court has been looking for an off ramp away from Trump. And this
Yeah.
is a perfect off ramp.
Yeah. And they've got to deal with that 14th Amendment thing. And that's a little bit of a stickier wicket. And they probably don't want two sticky wickets at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. So I'm hoping they just say, yeah, we're not going to hear this. This is ridiculous. And then Donald Trump will be without a defense in virtually all of his defenses. Um, we're going to wrap things up, Maddie. You're welcome anytime. It's always a pleasure talking to you. It's great talking to the listeners on the show because we have so many intelligent folks that offer different perspectives. And as much as I love to hear myself talk, I love hearing the other perspectives.
Definitely. I'm glad to be back, and I'm liking being more of a regular on your show.
No problem. People have really taken to the regulars, the old souls, the Eds. Matt was a new person. He's going to be coming back on. Um, there's been a bunch of others that will be back on, and hopefully some new folks too. But it always adds to the show, and you certainly do that when you come on. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And for those of you,
Anytime, happy to come on. And if there's future LGBT things, I'll definitely be
uh,
on to talk about it.
absolutely, that's the one thing, good thing about everybody kind of has an expertise, so we can always have a go-to person to talk about that. For those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.